I will have Nicole do roll call for us.
Mike Flynn.
I'm here.
Julie Oates.
I'm here.
Shelby Poole.
Here.
Brian Sheep.
Here.
Julian Sporto. Here. Nicole Stevens. Here. Joe Valentine.
Here.
Patrick Baldwin.
Here.
All right, and then you've also got the mission and vision.
The mission of WLA is to utilize leadership-based programs and strategies grounded in solid research, combined with the demonstrated success of core knowledge curriculum as a basis of a rigorous overall educational program that builds strong skills in math, reading, literature, writing, music, science, and technology. The vision of WLA is to be a school where students and graduates become exceptional leaders and are prepared to take on the academic and leadership challenges they will face in high school and beyond.
Well done.
All right, Bruce, we'll turn to you for an update.
Well, thanks. You've got the prompts for the discussion tonight. And we really, at this point, I tell my board that the first interview is, do we want to see you again the next night? The next interview is, do we want to see you at the Christmas party? And I realize the Christmas party is pretty darn close, but I mean, you're really trying to figure out three things, right? How will the successful candidate perform on these items that are important to you, and plus the new information you had last night? Second, what do you need to do to help the new leader be successful? You know, if you would have interviewed 5 people, they would all come and start the job a little differently. So you want to be thinking about how the board needs to build the right onboarding situation here. And then the board also, I think, has to decide how they want to handle messaging out regarding the hire. And we can talk about that a little bit more later. The biggest thing is I think that Jonas needs cord to charge his phone, so I'm waiting for him to get back in so I can loan him mine. So, are there any other additional items you'd like to put on the interview topic? Pardon me, on the interview topic. Let's see.
I did think of something earlier today. You know, the thing, I am dead in the brain today, so I will be completely honest, my words are not going to make sense today. The thing that we spent hours creating with the 3 primary goals, like the maintaining a fiscal, like
Your strategic plan?
Yeah, the thing that we read at every board meeting. That thing, do we want to put a question in there like, here is our strategic plan, could you talk to how you could see yourself?
I guarantee you he is going to be asking you that question.
Oh,
Yep, so.
okay.
don't
So I
worry-
should pull
don't-
up our strategic plan?
So don't worry about losing the right lingo. That was one of the questions he had for me when we talked today. Was, is there a strategic plan? I said, yes.
Great.
And, so he's going to kind of work with you on where that is.
Let me get that pulled up so that I have that ready.
It's a pass-fail assignment. Okay.
Yeah, I know, I don't want him to be like, these guys don't even know their own strategic plan, I'm out.
You're hoping you had one. Jonas also had a question about the 30, 60, 90 integration plan. He wanted to sort of know what the board was anticipating. So, you know, I really believe one of the ways that you can see who you're working with is to essentially tell him to lead this meeting. And you'll know more about him than if we ask him questions. And he understands what the topics are because he received them last night when I emailed them, or this morning when I emailed them out to you all. But I'd be very comfortable with you saying, you know, Jonas, why don't you go ahead and talk us through these topics and find out what you need from the board and let us know what they need to know. He's going to be running meetings with you and for you in the near future, perhaps.
Would we still have the opportunity to have like follow-up questions, you know what I mean, like with that?
Absolutely. I mean, I really view this as a discussion with your candidate tonight, not even really a second interview. Your thoughts?
It's fine by me.
Yeah, I think it's a good approach. Yeah.
All right, very good, very good. Then we just need to put an ankle bracelet on him. Maybe you've got some extras out in the car.
I know some people.
Bring them back in there.
So we're waiting for him, is that what we're doing?
I believe so. He
I
was here a
feel like I
moment
can
ago.
hear him in the hall.
I'll check again.
Someone's talking in the hall. Don't worry guys, I'm writing down our strategic plan.
We're all looking to you.
He was wandering the building and he came up in my classroom. I said, oh, who are you? Haven't seen you before. I'm like, I'm on the board. Last night. He's like, oh yeah.
He saw a lot of faces.
My hair was down
Yeah.
last
You
night.
did have
You
a
didn't have your
different look, a
glasses on
different
either.
vibe.
Did you have your glasses on last night?
On and off.
Yeah.
We also didn't do introductions.
No.
did not.
Yeah.
I feel like I
Which we
wouldn't
should have.
remember anyone either.
Our man is conspiring with Ben, and then he's
boy.
running down to the men's room, so he should be here in a couple of minutes.
Awesome.
Sounds good.
Then I better look at the cookies.
These little frosted get-ups.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty good.
They look,
They've got that right touch of
I was
salt.
baking all day, so you have to eat them.
well,
That's the key to a good sugar cookie. It's gotta
Club
have that,
cookie?
yep, that right touch of salt in
There
there.
you go.
That's what makes it perfect.
Salt makes a
Shelby,
lot
I'm
of things
staying with
go.
his college roommate, and he's got some Kirkland, like white chocolate.
Oh, yeah,
Some
anything
brutal
Kirkland, they're baked. Oh,
I bet you-
never mind, don't
I
get
bet
me
you-
started.
Wow.
This is public.
You were ready for that one.
We are doing a cookie exchange at work tomorrow,
Oh,
but you
fun.
had to bring 72 cookies
whoa.
to
Oh.
participate.
Like
And I
hefty.
said, I'm sorry, I don't even have the capacity to store 72 cookies, let alone bake them.
There's no
And
shame.
also, if I take home 72 cookies, I'm gonna eat all 72. And I don't need to do that either. So I'm not participating.
There's no shame in the game of buying Kirkland cookies, taking them out of the packaging and plattering them.
Yes.
and bringing
Shut up.
them in.
You don't even have to platter them. People are gonna love Kirkland cookies.
The way they are. I wanted a cookie exchange, but I didn't get anybody on board.
I would have done it.
You would have done
I
it?
totally
Can
would
we still pull
And
it
I
off?
totally would have made Team 2
Just
do
you
it.
two?
So,
Can we still pull it off?
yeah.
Like, yeah.
Sarah Jocelyn did one with like friends, so she probably would have done it. We can do it.
Not now.
I say that, but
If I could put an email up
if you put an
tomorrow,
email out, I'll do it.
and we could do it like.
Not 72 though.
No.
It's gotta be a little bit
24.
lower
On
quantity.
plates of 6 so that you get to take 4 different
Even.
things. I don't know, like
Yeah, I would do it. I love
36
baking.
or
I was
something.
like,
like this last night?
I
Hi.
think it's about the same, isn't it?
Yeah.
5 degrees off from last night.
Right.
I'm just letting you borrow it.
That's that situational
We
awareness.
shifted it a little bit, just to throw you off.
Somebody must have thought of it.
And looks like we have the same team.
Yes, the same herd.
It was see, you guys are right, I was listening on the way home. But I was listening on my phone, I wasn't watching, because I couldn't see who was saying what. So I didn't know that it was Cassidy that was saying something.
Oh, yes.
I knew somebody said that, but I wasn't sure who it was. So. All right, thank you for having me back.
Yes, welcome, thank you for coming.
And we are fully convened and ready to roll.
You are.
So you saw the questions.
I did.
You and I visited a couple times today specifically about the strategic plan, the 30, 60, 90 plan. Do you want to, within the framework of roughly an hour, lead us through these topics?
I would like to leave.
Yeah, we want to
God.
introduce ourselves.
Yeah, and I also want to leave significant amount of time for 7 with questions and things that I'd like to
Yes.
talk about and discuss with you as well. So I want to make sure Bruce, if you can keep me on schedule to give us a good 20 minutes.
We'll
Yeah.
gently nudge it along.
Yes, okay.
Let us go ahead and start with, and board members, give a minute or so of who you are and what you do and what your connection is, and give them a little flavor of who we are.
Yeah, Joe Valentine's, I'm probably the rookie of the school board. I've only been on this like my 3rd or 4th one. Parent member, and I have a 2nd grader here. I've got a toddler who will be coming when he's ready for kindergarten. I work at Sunrise Banks in the real estate due diligence side with appraisals and environmental stuff, so.
The school I'm at now does all our banking with Sunrise. So.
Oh, cool. Yeah, that's good.
So, I'm Mike Blint, been around since the summer. I've got an 8th grader here. She's our last one, the one I affectionately refer to as my 40th birthday present. The other one's 24 and 21, so there's a little bit of a gap there. I have been on 3M's campus for 13 years. I'll be 11 years as a 3M'er in November. And I'm part of the spinoff. They're spinning off the healthcare business. So at some point in the first half of the year, I'll be working for a new entity called Solventum. which is pretty exciting stuff, so.
And it's a spin-off of 3M.
Yeah, they're spinning off the entire healthcare business, so it's huge. It's, I think it's the biggest spin-off they've done. It should be pretty exciting and interesting times as we figure out what all that's gonna mean.
Ryan Sheik, got 3 kiddos here, 8th grade, 7th, and 4th. So we've been part of the WLA family now for, that makes it 9 years.
Wow.
So parent, board member parent, facilities chair, so obviously we've been here for a while, so we're passionate about WLA and the family and the school, and so.
So you here from the beginning? It was 9 years ago when it opened?
No, we missed the startup by about a year or two.
Mhm.
I'm not the historian here. Where's our historian? She's not here. Well, where's Nancy?
I know.
So,
Close,
from
but-
what I've heard, the first few years were pretty rough. What
Yeah.
made you stick it out when you first came, or did you not experience the rough personally?
No, we did, yeah. Well, there was more to this school than just the drama.
Got it.
So,
There was enough good things,
the culture,
yeah.
the teachers, the relationships.
Mm-hmm.
And so I could see, the quality and the benefits and the real passion that the teachers had for the students and the quality of what they brought to the table, and it was well worth sticking it out, and
Mhm.
instead of running from it, we just invested into it and
Good for
tried
you.
to
That's
be a
awesome.
part of the solution rather than the problem, so
Love
here
that.
we are,
That's great.
yeah.
I'm Jolene Scorall. I've been at WLA since 2017. I am one of the physical education teachers here. I've taught high school, middle school, and now elementary school. I've taught preschool, so I've taught at all levels and really enjoyed my time here. I started on the board here in 2017 as well. There's a board member that was moving overseas, and so I was onboarded at that time. So I've been on the board basically the whole time I've been here. I've served on all of the committees. Right now I'm serving on the finance committee and I'm the board treasurer.
I hope my charts yesterday didn't scare you off that.
No. No. Yeah, I've been around for a little while then.
Thanks, Jolene.
Mhm.
Hi, I'm Shelby Poole. I am the board chair. I am a community member representative. I live just by 3M, but landed at WLA. I am a former employee of Kathy's from St. Cloud and moved out here a couple years ago, and she said, oh, hey, now that you live really close to us, we're looking for a community member. So joined, I'm in my final year of my term, so 2.5 years in now. This is my first year as board chair. I am also a school leader. I am a school leader at New Century Charter School, also a VOA school.
Oh, I'm blanking on the name. He's my friend. I mean, I talk to him all the
Dr.
time.
Ali?
Yes, I talk to Dr. Leah all the time.
Yep.
He's been very, very gracious. It sounds
Yep.
neat.
I
Thank you.
enjoy working for him. So.
Good.
I'm Nicole Stevens. I'm a second grade teacher here. I previously worked in the business field. I decided to go back and get my master's in education. So I've been here for 3 years. This is my 3rd year. I started on the board in the summer and I love it. I'm glad I switched careers.
That's
So
great.
it's been fun, but the board is a fun opportunity to actually use my business degree a little bit. So,
That's great.
yeah,
Thank you.
It's fun.
My name is Julie O's. I am teacher member. It's my 5th year here at WLA. I walked in as a sub one day and never left. Came on permanently the next school year. 5th year, and I'm in special education.
Okay,
Middle
thank you,
school.
Julie.
Don't give me littles.
That's our special ed coordinator at our school always says that. Don't give me the littles, and she always ends up with the littles. So,
I'm Patrick Valmuth. I'm a community board member here, so this is my first year. I came in May, so I'm a welder by trade.
oh, great.
So I work for Acceptance Group. It's a company headquarters in Germany, so we have our American headquarters is in New Brighton, so we're doing gas and oil, mining, heavy industrial filtrations, things like that.
So I'm wondering what drew you to serve on the board? I know Shelby said
Well-
Kathy.
Well, I know some of the parents,
Okay.
and I've heard good things about this school, and you know, I've checked it out, and then you know, they had a opening on the board, and I liked what I saw, and you know, just kind of going over the test scores and stuff, and how you know the performance of this school, you know, much better than you know traditional public education. So they're, and you know, just out of curiosity, I wanted to see what are they doing differently here than they are.
Does
in
your
other schools.
sorry, I didn't cut you off. Does your background as a welder, does that have any influence on your thoughts about what the high school program should look like here?
Yeah, you know, manufacturing in the United States, as we know, has largely decreased in capacity and size over the years, but it's on a rebound. Probably doesn't look like it right now, but in the next 5 to 10 years, you know, high technology, you know, you talk about solar and wind and you know, alternative fuels and stuff. Well, a lot of that stuff is going to be manufactured here, just because this is the market for it. And so we have a labor shortage in those fields. And it isn't just welding, it's, you know, engineering, it's drafting, things like that, you know. There's gonna be a lot of work for people who you don't necessarily need a 4-year college degree, but you know, the vocational, the trades, you know, is gonna need a lot of skilled people, and it isn't just, you know, your basic math. You're gonna need some quite a bit more education that you would receive in high school. And I think this school, this type of learning, it fits in with that. So,
Thank you. I'd love to talk with you more about that in relation to the
Sure.
high school at some point, hopefully, so.
Jonas, we're at about 5:40.
Yep.
And in order to sort of adhere to timeline, we've got 7 items here. We should probably do a little less than 10 minutes on each one to sort of move it along.
Yep.
If you'll start, let us know when you would like. I'm sure board members here aren't shy, but get it to a point and then start asking for questions.
Well, let's narrow it down to 6 items right away. Number 6, do you have any responsibilities outside of WD? No, none. Right now, for a while, I was coaching my daughter's traveling basketball teams, but she's off to college now and studying to be a teacher in Colorado. So,
Nice.
So now we're down to 6.
Well done.
So now we got.
It's easier
Good time.
to round that up.
Yes. I can be concise at times, see? So I have to admit, I did have to look up verbose. Heard it used many times, but, you know, wasn't exactly sure.
Word of the day.
Word of the day, verbose, uses too many words, so definitely. So the first one, in terms of the part about leading others, and I think a comment I had made around we'll need to figure out what that will look like working with the 2 assistant principals, maybe led to some questions about, hey, in your current role, you're doing so much of everything, how is delegating gonna be? And I guess I will respond to that in a number of different ways. First one is that my current role isn't my first role. I've been in situations, I've been in schools, really a school with 800 that's, you know, K-8. And so in a similar structure, when I was in 916, we had multiple sites. And so each site had its own, essentially, site leader, and I oversaw each of the sites. So that part is not unfamiliar to me. And in fact, it's probably one of the 2 things I'm most proud of in my career, at least the 2 I refer to the most, is that the number of people that I've worked with that have gone on to be school leaders and successful school leaders. And that's been true in each of the school principal roles I had, and even in the coaching roles I've had. which were my first leadership roles. The people I worked with that were assistants went on to be head coaches. One of them is a principal in Osseo now. My first principal job at 916. The two individuals, neither of them were a licensed administrator when I started, and one is now a principal in Osseo. Another is the assistant principal at South Washington County, Eastridge.
Eastridge.
Yeah, right by here. She's assistant principal there and was really the principal that followed me in 916. Assistant principal I had in Minneapolis, became principal the next year. The first assistant director I had at TESFA before we became Twin Lakes, went on to Burnsville as the head principal. And, I said to him when I started, and it was a situation where he actually was, in a few of those situations, actually, people were also candidates for the position that I got, and we were able to forge a good relationship. But I told him, if you're still here in 3 years, then I haven't done my job helping you grow and develop. And I always see that as a big piece. I know that was mentioned in at least one of the letters you got yesterday. So that's not the piece. Where my comment came from was I need to understand the current context and what Kathy's roles are and what each of the principals' roles are, because that can look and feel very different in different settings. And I also imagine that, this is just a guess, I have no idea, but when things started and Kathy was here her first years, it was 250, 300, and you kind of are in the weeds where I've been, and then things change when you add a principal, and these get bigger, and they change again when you add another principal. And so I'm imagining that those things have kind of evolved and can be hard to, sometimes they just evolve as things are added and aren't done starting fresh with the most thoughtful, what's the best way to utilize everybody there. And that's just natural. I mean, so that's what I was trying to think through is, okay, so, you could have your executive director and your two principals, but in some ways your executive director is still acting as a principal, and the principals are acting more as assistant principals in some ways, right? Or you can have a structure where your executive director is acting more like a superintendent, or it could be a combination somewhere in between. And so I think clearly laying out and figuring out what the board's expectations and hopes are, and are those different than what's been? Because maybe we're getting to a place growth-wise where that needs to look and sound and feel different to be most effective. And that was what I was processing out loud in terms of what that will need to look like, what we need to think about. But delegating is not a challenge for me. Trying to find people's strengths and getting people, I always talk about having people in the right seat in the bus and finding their passions and what they're good at and helping them develop is what it's about. So I guess I would, I guess that's what I would say in question one.
Okay.
So I'll jump in. So, boy, given what you're trying to do, and rumor has it you're going to put grade 9 here in the very near future, what are your thoughts about the relationship between the executive director and principals? I mean, because if in a worst case scenario, your executive director is another principal, in another worst case scenario on the far end, he's not near those cats at all, and he does nothing more than massage projects and move you along. Where do you want to see the executive director?
I can answer that. As we grow, and that's a big part of it, I want to see the executive director be the executive director, not get involved in every teeny thing that goes on. The principals should be more autonomous and well-defined roles. Not that everybody shouldn't be a team, but more autonomy and.
Well, as it stands right now, where I'm at in my current role, I'm the principal and the superintendent, right? I mean, I serve both those, even though it's a small scale, right? And there's the pieces of the superintendent part of the job that are working with the board, that are policy, that are, communication, that are working on enrollment and marketing and, so many different, setting the vision and the goals for the school. And it can get to be where every time you're dragged into other things, you lose your focus on this. And I actually talked to our board chair where I'm at this morning and talked to him about, the interview last night and he asked how it went and where things were at. And I thought he framed things really well. He said, it sounds like the one difference for you, he's like, you've done each of the pieces, but previous positions you've been in have been either teacher-focused or student-focused, meaning, when I asked him to explain what he meant, the majority of my time in the current school is with students and working on helping students' growth. Some previous roles, it's been really primarily working with the staff. And he says, in this role, it seems like for you to be most successful, the largest percentage of your time is probably going to need to be focused on the families and parents and community. And I thought that was, I don't know if that's true or not, but I thought it was an interesting observation. And it's hard to do that part well if you're in the weeds on everything. So I think that's I like what you're saying.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah, and just to underline that, I think you're onto something. That's a tough balance, between, kind of empowerment and leadership, but you do have to empower people to go out and run their own jobs and support them when they make mistakes, right? That's going to be, part of it. But at the same time, I was impressed to hear you tell some stories about, how you had developed some people and how you helped some people that, by telling them, look, my goal for you is for you to go get a bigger job. I think that's the right headset.
Thank you. I even expand on that, just popped in my head. A couple cases that there were people that didn't see themselves being administrators and took encouragement in me saying, I think this is a direction for you. I think you can be successful. And I know we have to be careful about gender stereotyping, but in my experience, sometimes there's some female leaders, particularly at secondary education. We don't have enough female leaders. And sometimes people, they need that encouragement to go that direction before they see themselves in that way. And of course, that's not true across the board. That's a stereotype. But in my experience, we don't have enough. It is a fact that there's not enough secondary female administrators. And so in a couple of the cases, I kind of encourage people that eventually went to do that on top of it. So thank you for recognizing that. I also think, though, on this, because I think this is kind of an important piece, if what we're trying to create is something that looks, sounds, feels different than what has been in place, it's important to call that out. Because whether staff members know it or not, they kind of expect and will judge me, and am I doing the same things Kathy's doing? And if there's some things that are intentionally being done different, then it's important to identify that with the staff and community. Here's how I might be doing things different than Kathy did, and here's why. We've grown to a place where for us to be successful, we have 2 principals now. Whatever the reasons are, I think the board establishing that for me is part of like the expectation, what you're expecting of me, and then me being able to name it with the staff will help how people feel about on the staff, they feel about how I'm doing my job. Does that make sense? Is that
Makes sense.
yeah? So I think that's an important piece. Okay, number 2. So first of all, number 2, this is the question I called Bruce about today. And I said, Bruce, having a little bit of a hard time with question 2 because it seems to me, and I thought this right when I heard it last night, that in terms of getting the board and the school ready for grade 9, if I'm going to start July 1st, that work needs to be done before July 1st, right? Getting the board and the school ready, like by the time I come in, it has to be there, right? So it was a little bit of a, if I'm offered the position, I don't know what type of transition plan, there might be, and so on and so forth. But there really needs to be the plan to have that happen before I would even take over July 1st. So it was a little bit of a difficult question, but I will respond to some of the things that I think are important to be addressed, and things that I would at least do very early in my tenure, if not in the pre-entry phase as possible. But I think things that I would need to do include reviewing all the school policies and handbooks to see what might need to be adapted in light of having high school, right? And so I think, you know, at a governance level, we need to look at all those pieces, and are there some things that might be, and I'm not imagining specifically what any of those are off my head, but I think everything needs to be looked at with that in mind. I do think the board will need to, from my experience leading high schools, when you offer your own degree, you know, there's state requirements for graduation, but typically schools will look at and have their own pieces that they might add to what the graduation requirements are. I think that will be a board piece that really families, when they choose a school, should know what those are when they're starting 9th grade, right? It shouldn't change on them, you know, after they start in terms of that happening. I think it would be very important to survey all of the incoming 9th grade students on their areas of interest in terms of extracurricular activities. Doing that in the, you know, shortly after the acceptance of enrollment piece, I think is important towards planning what activities might be offered the first year and what needs to happen to make that happen. I think that a survey of the incoming 9th grade families about, and this might even be too late actually, now that I think about it, but what they want the high school program to be. I mean, as I researched more about core knowledge, it seems like core knowledge is a K-8 piece. Am I missing something there? That's correct, isn't it? That there's really not core knowledge curriculum for 9-12. So the basis of the school curriculum right now is core knowledge. What's the basis? I mean, it can be a similar philosophy, but where are we turning for curricular resources and instructional approach, and what makes it look, sound, feel different than other schools? I think that's going to be a big piece. I did review the presentation that was made maybe in September, October to the board that Principal Rice had put together around high school expansion. I think a lot of work, really good initial work went into that in terms of what logistically is going to need to happen. But I think the other step of that is what makes it different and unique. And that's something that I do think needs a lot of input to figure out what the best way to approach it is. And that should be a board level, you know, decision too, if there's some type of focus or whatever it may look like. And I think doing things early is really important. And I'm going to save this conversation for when we get to number 7. But staffing it early is going to be important, because to launch a new program, you would better have the right teachers and the right fit from day one, or your reputation gets determined pretty quick, and people decide if this is where they're going to stay or they're going to go, and the word gets out pretty quick, and it can be tough to recover from not a good launch. And a good launch is 90% about having the right people doing it. So I think that stuff, you know, and we'll talk more about staffing later, but it's getting harder and harder, and you know, that needs to be thought out. So I would think that the work that Mr. Rice did in preparing is a good starting point, and you know, would think that he would make sense to be the person to be leading the kind of high school efforts, and as a high school principal, and so that there should really be a plan around that in place that hopefully he would take the lead on.
Board, your thoughts? It's a big project.
If you could, Jonas, tell me a little bit more about how you go about recruiting, because it's something it's a topic that's near and dear to me, and I think you're right. I think attracting talent is going to be, at least in the intermediate term, a bigger and bigger concern.
So honestly, this is maybe the question I most wanted to explore in depth, and that kind of happened 7, but it's fitting here, so let's tackle it here. But so first of all, I believe that the current teacher shortage is going to get much worse. In reading the tea leaves, it's already a problem, and I'm basing that on a few things. First of all, last summer was the first time in my 18 years as a principal where I really could not find candidates I felt good about hiring. It was the first time, this is my 18th school year, and the first time and we were out and we hired a couple people in early April that I felt good about, but once we were posting in July and August, and I literally, I know this is gonna sound made up because it doesn't even seem possible, had 6 candidates in a row that I scheduled for interviews cancel their interviews because they take another job. 6 consecutive had already taken a job by the time, and I was trying to schedule interviews pretty quick. So I based that first on that experience. I based it second on just talking to some people in colleges of education indicating how much their enrollment is down in education. And that's a concerning trend. And I also base it on, and this is more anecdotal, but in conversations I'm having with teachers. Teachers that are, we have a healthy culture and our teachers are pretty happy overall. But I have some really strong teachers that are in their first 2, 3, 4 years. They're like, I don't know if I'm gonna stay in education. I can't make ends meet. And I think the inflation over the last handful of years has really changed that equation. And so I say all this because there's a variety of things. We need to be out recruiting early. Where maybe you were trying to post jobs in, May and, after you figure out who's coming back and who's not, the best candidates are gone. You start trying to post in May. And so you need to do some, build into the budget and hopefully, you can kind of guess right, but do some hiring before positions become available, even if you don't know exactly where it's going to be. I also think another piece is looking at doing something where you're really trying to hire winter graduates and maybe having them be assistant teachers, sign them to a year and a half contract where the second half of the year they're an assistant teacher with the plan for them to have their own classroom the following year, and kind of make that part of the deal when you're hiring them, so that you're getting out. A lot of those teachers will sub until spring and then look for a job in the spring. And granted, there's less winter graduates than spring graduates, but there's definitely a pool of them. I think that is a piece. I'm in the process of experimenting right now. When we did apply for post jobs the last few years, the postings on Indeed, half our applicants would be from the Philippines.
From where?
The Philippines. I mean, literally 20, 25 applicants from the Philippines. And you go through and these people have doctorate degrees and have been teaching for 14 years. And I mean, like, way qualified. And of course the problem is you have to sponsor a visa process and that costs money and it's hard process. But I decided to go through that process. We have somebody who we're almost through who's going to be starting in January.
Excellent.
And we'll see how it goes. I did talk to people. I know there was an article in the newspaper from Wilmer about that. And what they said was, they talked to their human resource director. They did this for the first time last year. And she said they had 5 people they hired, and that they were all very hardworking. They all were very qualified. They're not used to having to deal with students that don't do everything they say. And so the training around behavior management is the piece, right? And so
That could be an adjustment.
yes. So like I said, I'm kind of doing it right now as an experiment to see the process and see how it works out. But I will tell you, I have no worry about what her work ethic is going to be. I mean, she was in tears when she found out that we were going to offer a position. It was life-changing, right? And so, and to be able to be on the visa, they've got to maintain their position. So, I mean, you're going to have people who are going to put the work and effort in and have and they also, in order to get the visa, have to speak nearly perfect English. So, I don't know how it's gonna work. Like I said, the people in Wilmer said, in a lot of ways it worked well. They needed a lot of work on behavior management with the teachers they hired. But they worked hard, they prepped, they were prepared, they delivered quality instruction, so on and so forth. So that's another piece. But, I mean, the other piece of the puzzle is compensation matters. And the piece I talked about people leaving, and it's a tricky conversation, because usually what happens in charter schools, all right, is in the 7 years I've been here, is charter schools tend to pay less. And because they pay less, we're able to say we have smaller classes, we have more instructional assistants, right? The money goes somewhere, and that's part of the way we attract students. And so having the small classes is valued by parents and valued by the teachers too. But then what tends to happen is a lot of teachers will stay 1 or 2 or 3 years, get some experience, and go to a district where they're gonna get paid more. And this constant turnover of teachers is a challenge. And I think that from looking at things, Woodbury Leadership pays better than a lot of charter schools do. But in order to really, I don't, as a parent, as a principal, both, the experience my child's going to have is all about their teacher. That's what it comes down to. And so whether that means looking at saying, and hey, instead of their class sizes being 22, maybe they need to be 24, right? 2 more, and hey, that's an extra $20,000, $15,000 to $20,000 per classroom. That could be the difference, well more than the difference that's needed to get the high quality teachers and retention. And I think that's a discussion that needs to happen at the board level. From what I'm seeing is that what's worked in the past isn't necessarily going to keep working. And the salary structures that we've had isn't necessarily going to be what we need to attract and retain the teachers that we want to have a great school for our children. And it's a hard balance because, class sizes matter too. I'm not saying they don't. But it's either, most of your budget that you have any discretion over is around salaries and benefits, and so it's either having less people or having a little bit higher class size if you're going to have salaries be higher. Something's got to give somewhere. And I just think that balance, what made sense and what was the best thing for Woodbury Leadership Academy a few years ago, might be different than a few years from now, and it's something that really needs to have a hard look at. And it's one of my biggest concerns, where I'm at or where I'm going. And that's why I wrote a whole thing about that in the questions you asked. Where I'm at, the difference between the pay scale where I'm at and here, the top is the same, right? The top is the same, but our starting pay is about $8,000 higher. And what I did is I looked at all of the contracts in our surrounding districts and said, what do we need to do to be the top for step 1? What do we need to do to be the top at step 2? And then we were able to get to about year 7 and be there the highest or close to the highest in each one. Problem is there's such a big gap at the top, right? And that would have made, there's no way we could make it work financially closing that gap more than we did at the top, but maybe the financial situation here a little bigger, maybe that can be addressed. So I just think that's important to know that that's something that's going to be important to me, and that I see it as a big challenge. You don't want to get where you're reacting. If you're proactive and you're out in front of it, you're going to be successful. In the schools that wait until they figure out that what we're doing isn't working and have these big gaps. You do that at a charter school and have these big gaps and have unlicensed people in classrooms, you lose enrollment real fast. And then you get in a negative cycle the other direction. And so we're going to have to look close at that.
Board, other thoughts about getting ready for grade 9? Other things you'd like to talk about with your candidate right now?
How many 8th graders do we have right now? Roughly, ballpark.
40, 43. And I never received any information from our enrollment event. How many 9th graders do we sign up?
Around 12. Well, I believe that's the.
New ones?
I'm not sure if they're
Yeah.
new or just returning. I believe that's not record.
So that's gonna need some serious effort if that launch is gonna work, right? Okay, how to initiate involvement with parents at WLA. This is a little tricky because I don't have a grasp on what's happening right now. And so it makes it a little bit hard for me to know. I know when I came into some other situations, I was really able to work within the framework that was in place and build from that. And I know I heard there was a PTA meeting tonight here in addition to this meeting. I don't know how big the PTA is and what the level of involvement currently is. But I would emphasize that one of the things that will be in the 30, 60, 90 discussion is really developing in the first 30 days a strong communication plan for families, staff, board, kind of 3 separate communication plans. And building something that has an increased level of communication, in part because I heard last night, I heard from around this table somewhere that that's something that parents have asked for, that there's been feedback around. And whether that is through newsletters, robocalls, or surveys, and or a system of, I realize this is a case where the context is very different. Like, the school I'm at right now, I've pretty much been in every student's home, right? Or at least at their doorstep and knocked on a door or whatever. That's not gonna happen with 800 kids, obviously. But you can do, let's say in that first 90 days, if you book out a half an hour every day and make as many phone calls as you can make in a half hour to connect with families, and just kind of one at a time. Just that one phone call, I think, can go a long way. How's things going? What do you like about the school? Just have kind of a little bit of questions. Well, I just want to introduce myself. I think that's a piece. And then through the systems that are in place, just encouraging the kind of the ideas that come up through your PTAs or your staff council, and supporting, what parents suggest, seeking ideas, and I think that things will typically emerge right there if they feel like it's valued and encouraged. And so I guess those are the things I'd say around that right now without knowing more about what's currently in place.
Board, how do you work with the new executive director to make this happen? What's your role?
Take a mice fishing. Sorry.
I think,
Yeah.
It's that season.
I like the things that you've contributed, and our PTA is very strong, very active. They are amazing and do a lot for our school. So building that partnership will be important for you. Making phone calls sounds really phenomenal, but that's gonna take a lot. In my mind, I'm thinking breakfast with the new director, inviting people to come in, maybe sign up slots of 20 to 30 people, you know what I mean? So it's not, 800 people showing up for breakfast with you one day, but
Yeah.
something like that puts you out to a few more than 2 people at a time.
So thinking back to that triggered some thoughts for me about some other things I've done in the past. Coffee with the principal, we called it, and we'd have, one morning a month where we'd have coffee with the principal, and we'd ask people to call so we can plan for how many there were gonna be,
Yeah.
say they're coming, but,
Yeah.
and just sit around, listen to ideas parents have, whether, they're part of the PTA or not. That's something. Also, we've done where we've encouraged families to go kindergarten drop off, the first day of kindergarten. That's so traumatic for some parents, especially if it's their first child, and have a place where they're kind of going to have breakfast or whatever, and go check in with them there. And I think that went a long way to building some relationships. I think those are some other ideas too as well.
I'm going to follow up on Shelby's suggestion. It's been my experience that board members have more influence with your friends and colleagues than you think you do. Most board members have pretty small egos, so you don't think this way. But if the school was to host a breakfast and you invited 10 families that are important to you, 2 things happen. one, I either make it and say, thanks, I appreciate meeting the new person, and I like coffee, so let's go at it, or I couldn't make it, and then you get a chance to say, well, let me tell you what I heard. So if you look at this, you've got the chance of affecting 80 people pretty easily to start putting it into the grapevine that this guy does good work, we believe in him. And even if I can't make it, you can make the follow-up call and do the same job. So there are board members that can really expedite a person's entrance into the organization should you choose to do it that way.
Mm-hmm.
And you won't have to make the pancakes or the coffee.
No, I like that thought. I think all of us, I think that's one of our strengths as a board, is the fact that we can be good ambassadors for the school. And I think a lot of it goes, and I'm gonna pat our collective backs here, is I think we conduct ourselves in a very reasonable and rational way, at least on the time that I've been here. And people see that, right? You know, there's people that jump into YouTube, and I hope they find our meetings.
Boring.
Yeah.
Boring.
Yes. That's what we're shooting for, is crisply professional, and we're just taking care of business.
That's the reputation.
Yeah, that creates a lot of leadership capital for the organization.
That's just me. I kind of like the waters around me to be calm.
I asked some people who work for VOA, not Stephanie, but some other people that work for VOA, experience working with Woodbury leadership, and they said, oh, you should see their board meetings. They're very impressed with the board meetings, so.
Follow the rules.
Pretty novel concept.
We don't break the
Are you
open meeting
suggesting that has
law.
something to do with it?
So are we on to ideal work environment? We're
It
good?
does
Okay.
seem like a good segue, doesn't it?
And could, on the ideal work environment, could you also talk about work with board and let the board talk about this too? Because this is one of the prime predictors of success of any ED is working relationship with the board.
And I'll just say too that is also within 7, so I may not need as much time for question 7 as we thought, because we're getting to them as we go here. Number 7, but, so we'll put that on the tail end of this. Just a few things I thought about, and this has a lot, I guess this first one does have a lot to do with the working relationship with the board, but I think a reasonable and appropriate amount of autonomy and flexibility within my role, that the board should be setting what our goals are, right, and helping set goals. We should be setting goals together for what I'm trying to accomplish as a leader. But in a healthy relationship, it's not micromanaging exactly how we get to those goals if we're meeting the goals. And that's one of the things I really like about being a leader in a charter school as opposed to a traditional school district. I'm used to I've been in bigger districts, and the reason that Minneapolis wasn't a fit for me was that everything was top down. What we were doing instructionally, everything. So there was no creativity, no real autonomy to really lead. You were managing. You were, and that's part of the job certainly. But everything had to be uniform from school to school to school to school, and I felt very stifled as a leader in that way. And that was what was liberating for me, going to the exact opposite. And I see us somewhere in between those two things. But I think having the opportunities to use my experience and skills, and I certainly have that where I'm at, but this allows me to use some that maybe I haven't been able to use as much as I would like, and I haven't had, I have all these years in high school, and I haven't been using that, and the experience around growth and facilities that I think I've kind of tapped out where I'm at right now. Opportunity to create transformation. I think having a strong collaborative teacher-led culture where it's this environment where teachers feel empowered, and comes back to developing leaders, right? It's not just developing administrative leaders, but developing teacher leaders. When you have an organization this size, leadership has to be in different ways at all kinds of levels in the organization. in the coaching world, one common thing that coaches would say when I was coaching was, you know, on bad teams, nobody leads. On good teams, the coach leads. And on great teams, the players lead. And that's kind of analogous, or, you know, to this role being the coach and the teachers being the players here, that there needs to be leadership at that level. And I'm proud that I feel like that's something I've developed, and where I'm at, where teachers really do hold themselves accountable and hold each other accountable. And accountable doesn't mean, you know, they're handing out discipline, you know, but it's, your colleagues coming late every day, you know, and if you're having to watch their kids for a few minutes, it's saying, hey, this is causing a problem for me, we need to address this, and not having to come to me and tell me about it, because we're gonna figure it out ourselves first and never even get to that point. It's kind of just a small example of what that might look like. So I think those are some of the things that came to mind. But as Bruce said, in this particular role, and this is one of the things that I wanted to ask you about, and so I'm glad you're bringing it up, is what the relationship is between the board and the position I would be in. Really makes a huge difference in what it feels like to lead in this role, right? And there is ways that the board can lead can operate that are legal, that probably, well, I think most people would say are not good practice, right? So I guess what is the board's beliefs and philosophy around your role is a question I would have as it relates to the school and me. And Patrick started to talk about that a little bit yesterday. If somebody calls me, what should we do? That's one example. But how do you see the board's role? I mean, obviously you collectively supervise me. You're making the decision whether or not to offer me a position. You would make a decision each year to how I do in the evaluation and whether to keep me on. So it's pretty important that I understand how you see your role and my role working together. And I have some thoughts, but I really want to know what yours are first and where our starting point is.
I view boards as advisory groups, not running the show.
No micromanaging. Good way to ruin any team. Takes the ownership away. You talked about the teachers, they need to feel ownership, like they have skin in the game, or else they'll just, you know, they'll feel like they are a number. Industry has changed over the last few years. They've been trying to push that, you know, it's not just the supervisor, you know, the buck stops here at the supervisor. Well, no, everybody has a responsibility, so.
Yeah, I'll try to be succinct here, but also to be clear, I think kind of strategic, operational, tactical, right? You know, strategic is, you know, big budget questions, strategic plans, stuff like that. That's where the board should live. And then I see your role as operational, right? You know, is what are the decisions and the directions we're going to take over weeks and months to say that we're going to accomplish this strategic goal. And then the leaders that are working for you and down in the classroom level, that gets to be a little bit more tactical, right? Is how do we make for a good Tuesday? You know, and how do we execute these plans? And if you do it right, then everything kind of aligns. You know, and I think that's what a big part of our job is to helping be clear on the strategic so you can align the operational and the tactical.
Well
Like,
said.
kind of like what you said too about working through, like that was the question in the interview last night about a decision the board made that you maybe didn't agree with. You didn't really run into that, and you said kind of your philosophy with solutions-based. That's kind of what I see this, sort of what we're talking about. Come to a solution, figure it out, and then stay away from the micromanaging, and you as the leader to do, like you said, the operations, carry out that plan.
You have a legal obligation as a board to do an evaluation at least yearly, right, and report to the community and how I'm doing. What has that process looked like, sound like, felt like?
It's a survey that's sent out to families with questions, and then a survey that's done with staff with questions. And then I think we look at like the budget, the line, like, you know, the things that we oversee. But it's mostly input from stakeholders.
And it's wrapped around the job description
Yeah.
as well,
Right.
so.
Yeah.
We go through the bullet points of
Do
the
do
job
you,
description.
do you do a mid-year review historically, or anything like that? Just a once a year?
Can I jump in here? One of the things that I try to suggest to boards is that if you do an annual evaluation, it's an autopsy. It's what's happened over the last year. And one of the ways to get a great relationship off to a good start is this. There are 3 data sources to give back to your ED about how he or she is doing, right? How is he or she doing on the job description? How is he or she doing on the strategic plan? And how is he or she doing on other stuff? These are the 3 sources. I recommend that a small group, a non-quorum sized group, meets with the ED at 90 days, at 180 days, at 270 days, and goes over for half an hour each. Where are you on the strategic plan, the job description, and the other stuff? You roll all those forward and turn those into the annual evaluation. Because as you're building a new relationship with someone, that feedback from the board does one of 3 things. Either shows where it's working, where it's not working, or what the board doesn't understand, or what the new ED doesn't understand. So I'll shoot copies of that off to the subcommittee. There's a kind of a picture that explains it a little cleaner, but I think it's a much better system than, hey, well, be talking to you in October of 2024.
100%. I think that's very true. And are we all familiar with policy governance, what that means? Is that what I'm talking about? What does that mean to the board, policy governance? Do we,
So 3 of us serve on the governance committee, 3 of us. And we have a calendar and we hit like the 100s in this month, the 200. We review almost all of our policies annually. The ones that are required to be annually, we prioritize. Then we submit any changes to the board. The board reads all the policies. I mean, so we are, our policies are pretty well governed. If there are things that come up that need to be changed, that we know are coming up, like we are doing new uniforms, do we know we need to change our uniform policy? Like those kinds of things we stay on top of, so we're pretty with it with our policies.
good. Do you have a policy review calendar, like the calendar of how you're going to do it? Yeah.
Does VOA provide board training on policy governance, do you know?
I don't know. I don't remember seeing that on the agenda at the
I
training.
can't remember that.
They do have the option. It's been the last couple of years, it's been, you have to, the last morning when you check out, people that are doing the training stay longer that day and do it. But there was also a piece last year on a session on new kind of website-based training that's put together for charter schools. And you can really do all your required trainings online at home pretty
That's how
pretty
a lot
simply
of us
now.
have done
Yeah, I
ours,
did that
yeah.
last year too, just
Yeah,
to
that's what
get
we're
it.
doing.
Good, so
Yeah.
I know what it is.
You know,
It was nice.
the real root of policy governance is making sure that a board is up in the balcony, not down on the dance floor, right? And since micromanagement has not been an issue with this edition of the board, the policy governance piece might have been sort of set aside, but there may be some time when you and a new ED want to go through an hour's worth of that from VOA and
Yep.
just refresh it and kind of get it clear in your mind.
Yeah, and I think what I was referring was partially to what you're saying, but also partially what Bruce is saying. I know when I was a school board member, and that was a big emphasis on the board, and the question would come, board members would often say to each other in a board meeting, is this at the policy level or are we into the management level right now? And trying to keep those two things separate, where at the management level things should be setting goals and holding me accountable to them, but not getting into the weeds and how we're doing it.
The Moorhead board has a phrase they use, it says, pull up, which means that we're headed for the weeds. And the late, great superintendent there was a woman, and they'd say, Lynn can do this, we're gonna pull up now. And the board would go, oh, yeah, that's right, we're getting too close to the weeds. Let me take over.
And my experience has been the boards that are not functioning well and have a lot of conflict tend to not be operating at the
Yeah.
policy level.
Yeah.
They tend to be getting there. And that's why I say legally you can do it, right? It's not, your role is you could make it whatever you wanted, but what makes sense and what's gonna make me want to stay here till retirement, would be, if we're in the weeds all the time, that's not a place I'm gonna be comfortable very, very long, if that makes sense. So, okay, thank you.
30, 60, 90?
Yeah. Well, there's two parts to this. The first thing I did is I tried to do a better job of addressing the question that made this come up yesterday was, what would be the three priorities you'd have? So I actually have 4 on here now, although the 4th one I have questions about. Okay, and then I made a document that has those 4 priorities, and the next part was supposed to be at the start of the 30, 60, 90 structure. But apparently I hit one-sided instead of two-sided copying. So
Oh, nice.
it really, I'm kind of embarrassed to even hand it out because you can't really see.
I think the group's gonna be able to get over that.
Okay.
It's a pretty august crowd, man.
Okay. So, yesterday afternoon, I took a half-day personal day to get ready for the interview, so I was kind of swamped today, and this is what happens when you rush on things sometimes, you make errors. And that's what happened here. But what this is supposed to be, the second part, so you can't make any sense of it. Well, those are the 4 goals, you can read them. Although the 4th one, conduct a comprehensive school-wide needs assessment, I wrote that before I talked with Bruce about the fact that you had kind of been through a strategic planning process just a couple years ago. So that may change what that last one looks like. I didn't notice the strategic plan online, although it's pointed out that, I guess apparently, at least part of it is there. But it just seems to me that, and I don't know to what extent that plan was implemented with fidelity. My experience is more often than not, you go through this long strategic planning process, make these plans and goals, and it doesn't have a lot of influence in the organization a lot of times. I don't know if that was your experience or not. The place I was at where it had a big influence in the organization was the 2 years I spent in Osseo, which in a big district like that, it can be particularly hard for plans to work down. But I had a tremendous role model in Kate McGuire, who was the superintendent at the time. She was superintendent of the year I was there. And she was so good about every meeting and every agenda item was tied to the strategic plan and showing how it was tied, and starting every meeting with reminding us of our mission, and it kept it front and center. And just without her telling me to do the same thing, I was doing the same thing with our staff, right? And it was really filtering across the organization. And so I think it can make a big difference, but I think it's particularly important when you have the type of growth and change having here. There's got to be a roadmap, a plan. And so somehow, whether it's revisiting the roadmap and plan that's in place and making sure it's there and seeing if we can create better focus on it. And one of the ways that we did that in a couple places I've been is you would have, well, in Osseo, for example, the plan had a lot of different pieces to it. And you can't focus on a lot of things at once. You try and do everything well, you do nothing, right? But these are the priority results this year. So all these things are things that are kind of being worked on, but these are the things that are going to get really the focus of our meeting time, the focus of our funding, and the things that are going to be reported to the board this year. Right? And then you report those 3 things. And then, okay, at the end of that year, are any of these need another year where it's the focus? Some things might need more than 1 year where it's the focus item. Okay, this one we can take off, this one we can take off, this one we need to leave, so let's put 2 more on here. And these are the things we're going to report out to the board this year. And the reporting on those things is how we keep the focus on it, and how it impacts the work, and how the board can judge whether we're meeting the strategic plan. I have no idea what yours looks like. Like I said, I looked for it and I didn't see it. Bruce pointed out, there's a piece on it under, what did you say, under who are we?
About the board and about us, that's where it had been.
About us, okay, so apparently I missed it. But that's that. So what this was supposed to be, but you can't tell because you don't have the first page, you only have the top. At the top, across the top here, what these 4 columns are one is operations, one is governance, one is academics, and one is communication. And so it was basically saying, okay, this is the structure of how I was visualizing it. Here are the things that we're going to do in communication in the first 30 days to the 60. And it wasn't completely filled in. It wasn't designed to be. Even with all that, the idea is in the pre-entry, as I have conversations with people or in the first 30 days, it's a working document that you would be adding lots and lots and lots of items to. And I didn't try and think of everything. I was more just trying to show you the structure of what it would look like, which I didn't do because you don't have the first page. But, you know, it's got July, it has pre-entry, July, August, September, and then those 4 columns. And that was kind of how I was thinking about it. And probably my first attempt after looking at a variety of 30, 60, 90s that would work well with my brain. There's other ones where you could get a lot more detailed in this is our deadline and this is, you know, but that was, in terms of getting my arms around it, that's how I was thinking of structuring it. So I apologize, I didn't get you the documentation or do it, but at least you know that I have a plan and a way of thinking about it that I think will accomplish what you're hoping for. And as far as the goals, seamless transition, I think the first one is the one that I kind of talked about yesterday, right? There's got to be a lot of focus on making sure that, hey, that first year launches go smooth, and it's not like, okay, we got a new principal and everything's a problem now, right? Or a new leader and everything's a problem now. You just got to make sure that everything runs right and start to build trust. The second bullet I put is, I think, working on having, building up a ramp up of our school-wide behavior plan. I based that on feedback I got just talking to teachers yesterday walking around the building. And I said, well, it's the one thing that, and it's not hard to predict because it's true at most schools, I think, right now, right? It's, when you talk to people everywhere. But whether it's just ramping up what's in place and reinforcing, getting everything in the same place, or adding some pieces to it, I think that is a goal that everybody feels like we're really working on this together, because I think it's a really critical piece also in terms of teacher retention and retaining our strong teachers. I think the third piece is a successful launch of 9th grade. And then, and if you're looking for smart, measurable goals, I realize these are not those, but these are, you know, more broad goals. And then whether it's conducting a comprehensive needs assessment, or maybe that's not necessary to do, I guess I have to look at the work that was done a few years ago and have more dialogue about where that's at. But I do think we need a plan, a roadmap of what this next years look like as we continue to grow and add grades, and we need to have a plan that we can get our arms around and yet measure and have a plan to report and focus to the board so the board can measure that it's happening, and so on and so forth. All right. 6 was not one, and so the other one was what questions do I have for you? So this whole first bullet point was about that I was going to ask you about was about the whole staffing and recruiting and retention and all that we've already discussed at length. And a second one was about the strategic plan. A third thing I just want to point out, and this is a little bit in conflict with something I just had talked about, where if we're going to try and address teacher and staff salaries, we can't be looking to add a lot of positions, so on and so forth as we move forward. But I do think that the school is reaching the size where, I mean, I'm a pretty good writer, but not a great writer. I think that having someone to support me in some way around communications would be helpful, and have somebody to support, whether it's somebody who's, you know, contracted, like, you know, not an employee, but that we contract with a certain number of hours, so on and so forth. But we're at a level and size where I feel like the newsletters that go home should probably, you know, having somebody that's their expertise first and foremost support would be helpful when we do marketing materials, when we do, so I just think that that's something that probably wasn't necessary as a smaller size, as we're getting better in terms of something that I think would help me be more successful in the job, some type of support around that building into our planning. And maybe there's that support on staff already. Maybe the expertise is here already, I don't know. But I do think that,
And Jonas, real quick, I don't know if WLA is a member of MINSPRA, which is the Minnesota School Public Relations Association. It's $100 a year, and it's the biggest gift imaginable. They typically have a big conference a year, and all the MINSPRA folks show up, and it's largely metro-based, because many of the rural districts, the superintendent is that person. There are not very many charter schools, but there are private schools in there. And for $100, you get access to everybody else who does it, because you can send out a question, how do you handle this? Or show me examples of your newsletters. And there are a number of those people that are doing it as part-time gigs. And you could find people from there should you want to hire somebody for 15 hours a month or something like that. So that MINSPRA is an incredible investment for $100.
I just know that was, when I was in, one thing I did like about being in the bigger districts in Minneapolis and Osseo, is whenever I was sending out communications to the whole community, I'd always send it to the communications department first and have them look over my writing and make suggestions and edit, and typically I wouldn't have to do a ton, but there were times where I think it made a big difference. And I just think we're to that size where what comes from me needs to look totally professional. Where I'm at right now, I can be much more informal, right? It's just a different context. But that is something that just put out there that I might be looking to figure out a way to do with the board. What are your thoughts about that concept?
I think it makes a lot of sense. I mean, there's going to be some details to work through, but I'm picking up what you're laying down on the idea of having clear professional communication. And to your point about being a good writer, I'm sure you are, but I don't know of anybody who can't profit from some editing. So that's an important thing.
And the other thing is, I'm a relatively good writer when I'm able to really take my time and do it, right? When I'm doing a million things at once and I push things out, I need someone to support, or it's not going to look the same way it needs to be.
Right.
And so, and I'm imagining in this role that sometimes things are going to have to be a little bit rushed, and I might miss copying a page, and that would be bad. So that was a thought. The other thing I want to put out there today is not something that makes any difference whether I'd accept the position or not. And it might not even be the right timing, but I just want to put it out there today so that you know the reasons and why I think it matters. And that is, in my current position, we changed my job title from executive director to principal superintendent. And the reason we had done that was so many times a week, a month, I'd be explaining to people what being the executive director meant, right? People would come in and they would want to talk to our assistant principal, but they want to talk to the principal, but we didn't really have a principal. And I think that while internally it's certainly not a problem, with external stakeholders, whether it's letter going home, marketing materials going home, and I think when it says executive director, it kind of sounds like maybe you're not a real school the same way on materials. And I think that when you're trying to have conversations and doing partnerships with corporations and you say, this is the superintendent talking, they kind of know when it helps that piece. It's not, I don't care about job titles, there's no ego part of that or any of that. But I do think, as we think about, is my role really at the superintendent level and the two principals really the principal? If that's the case, I think it may also help, like, when families want to know who to talk to, it kind of makes it more clear. And the person who actually put the idea in my head was Stephanie at VOA when we were doing a tour, and she's like, well, why don't you, we have other directors that have their superintendent license that are called superintendent, why don't you use that? You can. It was actually her who put that in my head. It may not be the right time to have that conversation because even, I don't know, it might seem a little bit like disrespectful to Kathy, maybe, like a different title than she had. I don't know. But at some point, I do think that there's some reasons that make sense for the organization to do that, and we could do that, and there are a number of other charter schools that do. And I don't want it to come across as like something that's about me, but something I'd like the board to consider, whether that be now or in the future. So I just want to just throw that out there to mull on. Again, doesn't make any difference on whether I accept the position or anything like that. It's just wanted to throw it out there. So that didn't like later on, like, why does he need that now or something? So that was the other thing, and I think I hit my questions and my things I wanted to get across. And yeah, what else are you still sitting there wondering? And how are we in time, Bruce?
It's 8:30, it's 6:45.
6:45.
Oh, so I'm over already.
You're doing fine.
Not bad.
Nobody's
Yeah.
asked you to leave.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm good. This has been very
Yeah, me
informative
too.
and helpful, so thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, good. All right.
Thank you
Well,
very
I
much for
appreciate
coming.
each of you having me here, and I look forward to hearing what the next steps might be.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jonas.
Thanks, Jonas.
Thank you.
And I told Ben I was gonna leave this plugged in here, this is Ben's truck.
I'll hide it.
I was just gonna say,
Oh, I was gonna say, I'll bring it up to his office.
$5.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you.
Good night.
Take care.
Thank you.
All right. Next step.
I need to take this.
Should we take a 5-minute break? We'll use the restroom.
Yes, please.
Okay. Someone remind me to turn the mic back up. I'm gonna just turn the volume off while we're on our break.
Yes.
But if
session.
Come back in the, okay.
Could we hear from each board member in no particular order, your thoughts and how you'd like to proceed?
What would be the standard operation procedure right now? I mean, do we just talk to the board about it and where we want to go? Or do we just say, hey, I think we should hire this guy?
Both of those are acceptable.
Okay.
Should we start with thoughts and then we can circle back to what we want to proceed with?
Yep.
I mean, I can start. I really appreciate his focus on communication with both staff and families. Specifically in his handout, he mentioned having a conversation with every staff member prior to the start of the school year. I think that's very telling. I appreciate that, knowing more directly who the leader of your school is. Obviously, we have that experience, but it'll be really nice for team members and other staff. I really loved all of his ideas on staffing and how important that is now, because it is getting increasingly difficult, and I think that's just going to continue to become a problem as behaviors are increasing and teachers get burnt out quickly. So I think that incentivizing it and finding solutions before it really becomes problematic. And I appreciated his ideas on transitioning to the role and trying to clearly figure out what has been done, what he's going to be doing, so that there's no misconceptions on what has been done, what he's doing, any differences. So I appreciated a lot of those things.
Thank you. Just underline that, because I echo your thoughts pretty closely, is he brings a creativity that impresses me. You know, there was a deal in his write-up where he was trying to talk about, well, do we buy the buses? Well, he ended up explaining that wasn't a viable idea, but that's the kind of thinking, though.
Yeah.
You know, is let's go look at the Philippines, look at,
Yeah.
it's that kind of creative thinking that is gonna give you the step changes, so, and I'll play my cards, I'm comfortable, I'm ready to vote to offer him a job.
I would echo all that. I like that think outside the box kind of mentality, especially as we're rolling out a high school and talks about, do we need to get another building, and just, yeah, he seems very solution oriented, and I like the focus on the teachers, because at the end of the day, that's where the kids are at, and if you've got good teachers, that makes all the difference. So just like you said, the Philippines, that was one of the things I had written down too, just kind of thinking outside the box to address the shortage of talent out there and stuff, so.
Yeah, solutions-based is what he said. I like
Yeah,
that.
yeah, and the relationship thing, kind of what Ryan asked about last night, it seems like he's somebody that wants to come in and build trust with everybody so that you can trust him through with the decisions he makes. And, yeah, so I'll play my card and say I'd like to move forward to make an offer on hiring as well.
Yeah, the guy checks a lot of boxes for me, for a leader. Mostly, he is a we guy, not a me guy. And, he's a team player, he cares. He seems really humble, self-reflective. You can tell he's made mistakes, as we all do, but you can also tell by the way he talks that he's learned from the mistakes. And so, which is a tremendous asset to have. I appreciate that he's well aware that there's a surplus of squirrels in his world, and he understands that and he gets it, and it seems like he will delegate certain things to certain people to be able to rein that stuff in and be task oriented and stay on track, and he's very aware of that, and I appreciate it because it's the same exact world I live in. So he's just, like I said yesterday, in my opinion, the guy's a seasoned pro, and I would like to go ahead and move forward with him as my vote.
I as well, I don't really have a whole lot to add to what everyone has said. Genuine is a word, I guess, I would add.
Yeah,
Seems
that's
genuine.
That's a good word.
And seems like he might do a lot of creativity, I guess. And I think we need that with the high school coming on and how we do that.
God, am I glad you said that, because I
I'm
think.
so thinking we're not ready for that. We are not ready for that.
I think a lot of people say, how do we build a high school? Well, we'll build it like the one we went to. No, I don't.
I'm in middle school. This is my venue. I'm scared. I am scared next year.
But I do think also what he said about, we need to have that done if he's
Yeah.
starting at
Right.
that point. So that's
Right.
on us more than
Yeah.
passing the baton to him.
Yeah, for sure. And I think we as a board need to address that at our
Yeah.
next board meeting. Like, where are we at? Is it realistic at this point?
What benchmarks have been set?
Yeah.
Are we at any of those
Right,
benchmarks yet?
right.
Then how do you go from there?
Yeah.
Yeah. I just feel a real steadiness.
Mm-hmm.
I just feel like he's been there, he's done that. He knows how to get where things need to go to, and he's realistic. Like, we can all dream and hope that's gonna happen, but really? I don't know if it's realistic for that to happen yet. So, yeah, I appreciate his thoughtfulness and his wisdom, so I would have to agree with you all that I think he's the right man for the job.
Patrick?
Yeah, I'm pretty big on participation and stuff, and getting other people's ideas and thoughts, and I like what he said. Solutions, not compromise. Compromise, you're gonna get a half. So you're only gonna get part. One part, and they don't always go together.
Patrick, I think that's the best interview answer I've ever heard.
Yeah,
I thought that was a home run.
I never, I'm super impressed by it. I like the idea of, when he came in and said, I'm just gonna feel it out. He's not gonna come in there like a bowl and china
Yeah,
cabinet and start pushing things around, and I'm gonna do it my way, da 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 da. He's, I like the, he talked about he called it the PTA, but he wanted to know what the parent involvement with the school, because I think the parents are, that's.
Big deal.
A lot of schools, parents, they send their kids off to school. What'd you learn today? Nothing. And it's like, well, they don't know. I shouldn't talk very loud because I know you guys in this room. I don't know the other teachers, and I know Nick and stuff. I'm still kind of the new guy, one step ahead of Joel there. But I like the way he wants to get the other staff members involved. And like I said, ownership. You got to take ownership. Because if employees don't think they have skin in the game, they get bored. And if they don't have, we have, at my job is that you want to move up, you can move up. There's plenty of opportunities, and so I think he's gonna, kind of light the fire under some of the staff's feet, and he's gonna kind of say, hey, we need you to step up. Some people may have to take a couple steps. So I really like that way he's working with people, and he's just not coming in with his own opinion.
Thanks.
Yep.
And where's our chair on this?
Yeah, I'm comfortable moving forward. I think it's worth acknowledging that, like, last night was awkward, I felt, so just with the situation with an internal candidate, and like, what does that look like moving forward? And, I think he touched on, like, he has worked with people that he beat out for that job, and that he was able to, handle that situation and support the person and grow them. And so I think, Nicole said it well last night, that Nick has a lot of valuable assets. It's just not the right time. But I think that he talks about growing people, and I think we have, both Ben and Nick are both very capable leaders, and with his guidance and oversight, and I think that's something else that we really need to re-look at as a board at our next meeting. And what I will suggest we add to the agenda is like reviewing the director's position roles and making what changes we as a board want to see moving forward. Are we ready to say, I mean, we all love Kathy and I know she's listening, but like, she'll be the first to admit it's hard to let go of things sometimes, right? When you used to do that, it's hard to let it go. And so he hit the nail on the head when he said, when you start small and you grow and you bring people in under you, it's hard to let go of some of those things sometimes. And so like, this is our chance as a board to decide, what do we want those clear-cut roles to be? How are we going to define them so that it is moving forward what we want it to be? It's a fresh start.
I'm
So,
glad you brought that up, because I agree. We need to determine that.
yeah.
At this point, someone would typically make a motion and second it.
I can make a motion that we move forward with, can't remember how to pronounce his last name.
Bugan.
Jonas.
Bugan.
Yep.
I would second.
Moving forward means offer him the
Offer him
Yeah.
the position.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right, so there's been a motion to offer Jonas Bugan the position of Executive Director for WLA. There's also been a second. Is there any further discussion? All right, I think we can do a roll call vote. So if you have your list, do you
Yes.
just ask each person for their vote, please?
Mike Bowen,
Yes.
Julie Owes,
Yes.
Shelby Poole,
Yes.
Ryan Sheik,
Yes, to move forward with him, yes.
Jolene Scordo,
Yes.
Nicole Stevens, yes. Joe Valentine,
Yes.
Patrick Wilmuth.
Yes.
All right, so moved. It's a unanimous decision. So subcommittee, we will hand it off to you guys to submit an offer. And Kathy and I spoke this morning or this afternoon about communicating out with families. I know Bruce touched about that too. Letting families know that we are going to make the offer, and people will, if one person is watching, I'm sure everyone's hearing about it, right? So communicating that out to families, and then when he accepts, communicating that out. So
Board, you've,
I said when, not if, guys. I said when.
That's positive thinking.
I want to take just 1 minute for editorial.
With, like setting, like as he comes in this position and setting the goals, like you said, where you start small and then kind of move up some. The point you made about the superintendent versus ED, and I don't know, I'm just asking that question, like, is this the time where, as this team takes it now, is that, it didn't seem like it mattered to him, but is it something that you address now? Is it something you address later? Is it?
You could kick that can down a couple of months. It's
Yeah,
just
okay.
fine.
Okay.
I mean, I think it's a sage observation, especially for building relationships outside, but it's
Right.
nothing that's 11th hour for this group right now.
Okay.
I like the idea, but my thoughts are, if we're gonna move that way, he said like maybe down the line. No, not down the line. He comes in as a superintendent, if that's what we're gonna call it.
And you guys, again, you've got some time to do it, but it would be nice to start and print those business cards once.
So kind of clarify, why does he want to be addressed as superintendent versus director?
Because
It's
he's
not about being
approaching people with
addressed.
the local chamber of commerce.
Yeah, just more
It's for
familiar
clarity.
term.
Public schools use the term superintendent, not executive
And a lot of
director.
people don't understand charter schools.
Yeah.
And
Right.
is this a business that there's an executive director? No, it's not. We're nonprofit. We're.
When I applied, I looked
So
it
you're a
up,
private
like that
school,
was something
that's what
different
I
to
get.
me.
Yeah. If I could jump in for just a moment, you've done a ton of work here, and the three of you specifically, in terms of more Zoom sessions, more calls, answering texts, emails, voicemails. I appreciate how hard you've worked on this. You've put together a really rigorous route for people to get through. You had two great people that can do the job. You've made a good choice. I just emailed off the material on providing the feedback in the system and the Minnesota School Public Relationship organization to you guys. If there's anything else I can do to help with spraying some WD-40 on this thing and just getting it to work, just call along the way. Nice work, everybody.
Thank you, Bruce.
Thank you.
And Bruce, thank you, because
Yeah.
this was something that going into it, I think a lot of us were like, okay, I'm not sure where to start trying to find people with the right qualifications. So I really appreciate the work that you've done to lay out a framework and hit the milestones and get us there on time and on target.
Thanks. I felt like I was nagging a couple times, but nobody busted my chops for it, so
Yeah. No, I
thanks.
felt the same way, but it was, no, it was helpful, but and deadlines are good, right? I mean, and I was worried.
It was helpful.
That that I thought a big failure mode on this was for us not to move fast enough and then not have candidates in the pool because we were late to the party. So,
Yeah.
so thank you so much.
Welcome, thank you.
If he doesn't accept, then you'll help us move forward.
Yes, thank you, Bruce. Yep.
Thank you, Bruce.
Don't jinx it.
That was my heart stop.
I said when he accepts, but like realistically, like, let's say,
I'm gonna stop this nonsense with a move to adjourn.
A second.
all right, there has been a motion and a second.
Gone.
Good.
Is there any
I
further?
got one more thing.
All right, further discussion.
I just want to, from a board standpoint or position, I just want to address our stakeholders and just say, I want to encourage everybody just to keep this in a very positive motion going forward. It's always a delicate process when you have internal candidates and such like that. But we have such a good thing going. There's some talk going around, whatever the case is. Some of the energy isn't as positive as I'd like, and that's an inherent thing that happens during these processes. But again, we have such a great group of stakeholders, and that's what makes the school great. And I just want to encourage everybody to, if you're feeling a certain way, just to maybe take a breath. And in big picture, we have a really, really good positive thing going on right now. And I just want to encourage everybody to keep it that direction. There's some great areas and opportunities for growth that are going to come out of this that I hope we utilize. And so from a board perspective, I just want to say that out loud to our stakeholders. So let's just keep that positivity direction going. And let's make this a productive process. And I'll go with that. And I'll end.
Nice ending.
Well said.
Thank you.
Well said.
Good job.
All right, any further discussion?
I will make a second motion to adjourn for this evening.
I'll second your second.
All right, there has been a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.